Hello and welcome everyone to our 5th annual UX Award 2024. We'll just wait a few minutes for everyone to join. Perhaps they've had a previous meeting, so we'll just leave it a minute or so and then we'll get straight into today's webinar. Right, so I think we can get started. So Laura, do you want to move us on to the next slide, please? So just to let you know, we are recording today's webinar. So anyone that may have missed the webinar, you'll receive a copy of the recording afterwards. If you have any questions for our speakers, could you please post these in the Q&A and we'll pick them up after each of the publishers have presented. If you have any more general queries, if you could pop them in the chat. And there should be closed captions, transcripts, so you can use those as well to help help you through the webinar. Okay, on to the next slide, please. So yeah, just to briefly introduce you to the UX Awards. So we've been running the award for around 5 years now. This is the 5th year. And previous winners have included Sage Publishing, who won our awards last year, and you'll be hearing from them shortly. De Gruyter, Encoder Digital Music Library, and Emerald Publishing. And the awards are really set up to reward and recognise, I suppose, the really hard work that publishers put into improving user experience and user journeys to content and services, really putting users at the heart and centre of their UX design, essentially. And you know, the benefits of this are manifold in terms of, you know, user statistics, user engagement, users returning to publisher sites time and time again because the experience is good. And in a moment, you'll hear from all of our speakers to describe the work that they've been doing to improve that user journey on their platforms. So as I mentioned, so Alan Maloney, who's from Sage Publishing, will be presenting in just a moment about improvements they've made since last year. Then we'll hear from Emma Voden from Bone and Joint and Will Bailey from 67 Bricks. And following them will be Michelle Phillips and David Idden from BMJ. And finally, we'll hear from Ruben Barbosa-Hughes from Cambridge University Press. So now I'd like to pass over to Alan, who will give an update on UX improvements on the Sage platform since winning last year.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for having us back, everyone. First of all, I should say that winning this award last year meant a huge amount to us. You see a lot of smiling faces in our team photo there. So obviously team morale received a bit of a boost, which is good. I made the point in the webinar last year to stress the user experience, I think, is everybody's job and really a product of internal collaboration and relationships as much as processes and people. Processes and tools, rather, sorry. So seeing this photo with UX people, product people, and editorial people all congregating around and taking pride in this award is amazing. So best of luck to all of the finalists. Next slide, please. Cool. So last year in the webinar, I mentioned a couple of enhancements that were coming up in 2023, in particular, a revamped search experience, also a new taxonomy for our new diversifying and decolonizing research collection. The good news is that they happened. So tick there. The new search experience launched in June, and we just recently finalized the taxonomy work for the new collection in January. So this is kind of a theme for the platform now. Rather than continuing to add more and more features that the user probably doesn't need, a lot of the UX effort goes into information architecture projects to help users make sense of a platform that really keeps growing with content and is at risk of too much complexity. So great to have taxonomy expertise in our UX team. Means that we can work with our editorial partners and editorial boards to make sure that the great new content they're commissioning is findable and makes sense. So also brought some really good AI principles and extensive user research into our enhancements for the search engine, which is one of the areas that we identified as critical for improvement after the last redesign. So in the top right, you can see a screenshot of a search result using the new layout there. So I think it's interesting because in an educational or academic platform that has books and book-like content in it, you can present results at the work level or the chapter level, or both, but users get very confused telling which is which. So even if you do both, there are drawbacks to book level search results and there are drawbacks to chapter level search results. And last year I showed an example of the search of a search where the first page of results was pretty much all just results from the same book. So to solve that problem, we decided on a hybrid to show relevant chapters within the context of their work, which you can see here. And you can see is a simple change in the UI. So we're not going to win any awards for the UI here, but really it's a huge effort on the back end to re-index all of our content and use a completely new ranking algorithm to make this happen. So part of our job was to work with the devs to help refine that ranking algorithm and create a gold standard for testing. So lots of invisible UX work, but really important UX work. Pleased to report that's been successful. The outcome of this change is a search user conversion rate of 56%, up from 47%. So that's the boring dashboardy way of putting it. But the way I like to think of it is that means around 400 more people per month are finding a relevant result when they search on Sage research methods. So we can actually show the difference in our users' lives with what is a deceptively simple change. And then lastly, at the bottom there, we have a major project this year to introduce cross-platform navigation. I rehearsed that phrase 3 times. I still haven't mastered it. Cross-platform navigation to our learning resources, including Sage research methods. So you see a little sneak preview of it there. So again, it's deceptively simple. It's just a header that lets you navigate between resources. But there's a lot that can go wrong there. So that's iteration 11, I think, just of that very simple UI. It went through, I think, 4 or 5 different rounds of usability testing to make sure that users understood it. So a lot of work that goes into what is apparently quite a simple change. But within that, we're also doing a lot of hard work to provide a unified cross-platform search experience as part of this project as well. That's rolling out in the next couple of months. But also, most excitingly, I think, a unified profile section across platforms so users don't have to sign in multiple times. If you know Sage well, you might see that some of the names of our platforms are changing. That's another nice little UX win, I think, moving away from overly branded platforms like Sage Knowledge or Data Planet to use names that are more aligned to our content types, which is the way users think of our content. I've got 1 minute left, and I think the next 2 slides might take 1 minute. So if we can move to the next one. Cool. So just 2 very quick things on these final slides. Every slide deck I've done in the last 5 years has had a slide on accessibility or inclusive research. So just wanted to stress that's always going to be a really important area of focus for us and a value that we bring as a UX team. So in 2023, we became, I would say, experienced recruiters and facilitators of this kind of research of usability tests with assistive technology. You can see one here. And last year in the webinar, I said we had a goal of 5% of our user conversations being with users of assistive technology. And we met that. And thanks to how confidently I think we can now do this, we have now doubled that target to 10% for 2024, which I think is really great. And then just one more slide. So finally, worth stressing that we're still maturing, still figuring things out. The UX team is still only 5 years old. Funny, Jane, you said this award is 5 years old. We're the same age, I think, in terms of the team. Over that time, we've made a lot of progress based really on vibes, enthusiasm, the quality of our work, I would say. But as we continue to grow, that comes with more scrutiny on us to evidence our value. So we've been taking stock of what we're doing well and where we can improve. Last year, we had our first ever UX team summit where we identified 3 themes for the year. So that's metrics, process, and visibility as areas of focus. And I'm really putting this out there as an advertisement. So I know there are other people, other UX people on the call who I'm sure are grappling with similar things. In my experience, metrics in particular are a bit of an Achilles heel for UX teams. I'm pretty sure we all know what not to do. But in terms of what we do, then I'm super keen to share notes with anyone who is interested and wants to contact me. So with that, I will leave it there and hand over to the next person. Oh, you're on mute, Jane. I'm not sure if you're...
Oh, I thought I clicked it off mute, sorry. Yes, thank you, Alan, for that update. That's fantastic. All the back end work that you're doing around UX sounds like it's paying dividends. Yeah, if anyone has any questions for Alan, if they could please pop them in the Q&A box, that would be fantastic. And in the meantime, I think we'll go straight to our next speakers. So Emma from Bone and Joint and Will from 67 Bricks, over to you.
Thanks, Jane. And just to say on behalf of Bone and Joint, we're really excited to have been in the finalists here. So next slide, please. So who are we? We are Bone and Joint. We are a very small independent specialist publisher. So we publish orthopedic publications and we have a team of just 16 members of staff. So we do everything as much as we can in-house. We have 4 journals, 2 of those are open access, as well as conference proceedings. And we publish around 450 papers per year. We also have a couple of digital products. Next slide, please. So as we've only got one audience, we're very fortunate in that respect. We want to become their kind of go-to place for orthopedic learning. And we realise going forward as a small publisher that the traditional publishing format and model is not going to sustain us with challenges of open access versus subscription income. So we needed to look at what we were doing and work out the best way for us to secure our long-term future and recognise that we needed to branch out from just being a traditional journal publisher. And to do that, we felt that we really needed to look at how we presented ourselves to the world. And obviously the digital platform that the journals are hosted on is the starting point. It's business critical. For us, it's everything. And we hadn't really looked at our user experience for a long time, and recognizing that it actually needs to be a constant evolution, especially as we've been through a period of so much change with user expectations. So we had to do something quite dramatic, especially bearing in mind our small size to get there. Next slide, please. So we had a journal platform hosted by a well-established provider, and it did what it said on the tin. It hosted our content, users could access it, and it was working. As I mentioned, we've got 2 digital products that are on separate platforms, and we had a long list of things that we wanted to develop, change, or evolve, and we were finding that they were almost impossible to get done because it was either prohibitively expensive for something small, or the development queue was just too big for us to wait. And we had a lot of user journeys that were not optimal and were causing us to receive quite a few complaints, as well as some things in the background for the in-house team that didn't work particularly well. Next slide, please. So some of the issues our users were having, they were struggling to find and download relevant articles, finding that the search was not working well, searching within one of our open access journals and being given results for articles that were behind paywalls. Obviously, that's very frustrating. The workflow for downloading a PDF resulted in me receiving more emails than I would care to count. It was 5 steps long, which is just, you know, not working for anyone. It was difficult to purchase subscriptions or individual articles on the site. Lots of steps involved. And as I mentioned, it didn't work particularly well with our in-house systems or processes, and we had to do lots of workarounds. Next slide, please. And just as an illustration, this was the journey a user had to go on to get to a PDF. So they would, you know, find an article from an eTalk or a search result. They could view the HTML version or the abstract. They would have to click in the right-hand column, open the e-reader, and then open the PDF from there. So it just didn't work, and we needed to change it. Next slide, please. Users had to go through a very convoluted website registration process just to register for an eTalk. It was so cumbersome that we actually ended up using SurveyMonkey to collect their email addresses instead, and we would use a back-end tool to upload them. So obviously we were spending a lot of time doing admin that we didn't need to be doing, and our users were taking steps that they really didn't need to be taking. Next slide, please. So we wanted to create this hub, this go-to resource, and the start of that was the journals platform. We wanted to be able to be in control of our own destiny. If we wanted to make a change, we wanted to be able to do that in a timely fashion. We wanted to give a really good user experience. We wanted to make our marketing more relevant to our audience, and we couldn't do that with the disparate systems that we had. We also wanted to improve efficiencies to free up the internal team, because with only 16 members of staff, actually, we want to be focusing on our customers and our users, rather than, you know, admin tasks that they don't need to be spending their time on. Next slide, please. Over to Will.
Thanks, Emma. So this is where 67Bricks came into the picture. We are a technology consultancy that helps organisations from across the information services industries to achieve their biggest and most important goals. And we do that through a range of product development and advisory services, all of which put key users at the heart of everything that we do to get organisations to the goals that they want to achieve. Next slide, please. So we worked together in partnership, Bone and Joint and 67Bricks, as an autonomous product team that touched on all the different functions of the Bone and Joint business and all of the expertise and specialisms of 67Bricks as a technology consultancy. We started off by developing a vision for a platform that delivers on Bone and Joint's goals, thinking not just about journal content delivery journeys, but a broader orthopedic surgeon journey to get all of their information from one place. From there, having understood the challenges that a small organisation like Bone and Joint faces in kind of delivering on a really big ambition, we dialed in on the key users and how their experience kind of drives success. So we engaged with survey feedback, advisory groups, editorial boards, and generally we made the most of Bone and Joint's really strong position within the community that it serves and its access to different types of users making use of their content. From there, we rapidly built an end-to-end system to prove the architecture and design and test some of those key user journeys. So the e-commerce flow, the search flow, the downloading a PDF flow, all these really kind of problematic areas from before. And we established feedback mechanisms with users and the board. So a beta environment, workshops, walkthroughs, ways that we could ensure that search algorithms were weighted in the right way. And all of these things that not only create a really good best in breed journal content experience, but a broader kind of holistic learning experience for orthopedic surgeons. And from that point, we built things out in an agile process. So developing, releasing, testing, generating feedback and iterating, all while building the capabilities that any journals platform needs to sell subscriptions and be sold into institutional customers. And this culminated in full switch over from the existing journal platform, I think exactly 12 months ago today. And 15 months after kind of starting out on the journey together. Next slide, please. So we've got a couple of minutes left. We will run through kind of the key improvements that we've seen. On the reader side, the customer side, the experience has been improved in 3 kind of key ways. It's much easier to access, find, engage with content in the ways that users want to. So PDF downloads, search, navigation, reading experience. It's much easier to purchase subscriptions and articles, which is obviously fundamental to the operation of Bone & Joint as an organisation, and it's much easier to engage with non-subscribers. So as open access publishing increases the proportion of content that's open access, creating journeys that engage non-subscribed users has become much easier now as well. Next slide, please. So this is a very quick illustration of how much easier it is to download a PDF now. It's a one-click process. And next slide, and over to you, Emma.
So actually, can we go on to the next slide? I think what we've seen is the impact with our users. We've seen our full text views up by 52%, e-talk signups, which is, you know, obviously something really important for us to get out there to our key community, up by 10%, whereas it had been really static before this. And PDF downloads up by 72%, and lots of comments about the layout and the search function working much better. And, you know, the one thing we live for is our community, and the fact that they're happier with what we've done means that we're on the right track. And obviously that's something that we'll continue with. Next slide, please. So we've built the capability now to become and build out to the hub for the community. And we are able to bring in all the things we've done with our next product, which is something all around the education space, and we'll use all of the workflows that we already have in place. And that, I think, is that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emma and Will. So over to our audience now. Do you have any questions for Emma and Will? If you could please post them in the Q&A, that would be wonderful. If you think of something later, just post it in there anyway, and we'll pick it up maybe at the end of the webinar. So, we have a question. So, would you be able to share exactly how many interviews or testing sessions you carried out?
I actually don't know the number. We started the whole project with a series of contextual interviews with a varied user base, so from experienced and orthopedic surgeons right back through training, and then we, at each stage, we iterated and took it back to the board to get back out to extended users. Too many to remember, to be honest. Yeah, it's still going on, you know, as we make changes. Sorry, that's really woolly, but I actually don't know the number. Lots.
Thank you, Emma. One of our attendees would also like to know a little bit more about accessibility. Are you able to talk a bit around that, please?
I'll jump in on that. So accessibility site was built to kind of AA standard. The community that Bone & Joint serves, accessibility is not a huge kind of driving factor for them. So while making the site kind of navigable and accessible at a standard level was important, this wasn't a kind of central part of the user experience that we focused on. But it meets kind of the standards that you would expect.
Thank you, Will. And one final question is around SurveyMonkey. How did that work with the GDPR requirements? So the user was, basically told they wanted to sign up to eTalk, so they were either doing that from an email or at a conference, and they were going through a survey that allowed them to put in their details and opt in to receive
ETOC alerts for our journal. So they would say, yes, I want to receive the Bone and Joint Journal or Bone and Joint Research. And also then they could also opt into marketing. So it was fully opted in. And if they then received an email, there was the usual unsubscribe. It just was so much simpler than them doing it on our platform. They still had to do all of the opting in as per GDPR.
Worth stressing that that is now all done through the platform and they do not need to do that.
Thank you both. Those are all the questions for now. So I'd now like to move on to our next speakers, Michelle and Dave from BMJ.
Hello, thank you for inviting us to present today. My name is Michelle Phillips and I'm the Senior Product Manager for Open Research at BMJ.
And I'm David. I'm the Head of UX at BMJ and also the UX designer for the project.
So we're delighted to have a chance to share with you how we put UX front and centre in our approach to creating BMJ Impact Analytics, which we developed in collaboration with Overton. Dave will also explain how this fits in with BMJ's company-wide dedication to UX innovation. But first, I just want to give a little bit of background about why we decided to focus in on real-world impact.
Sorry, may I just briefly interrupt? Are you able to come closer to the microphone? There's some audio issues.
Absolutely. So I was just going to give you some background of how and why we chose to focus on real-world impact. And if we could have the next slide, is that better, Jane?
It is slightly better, yes, thank you.
Thank you. So as part of our vision for a healthier world, we went out and actively spoke with medical departments, researchers and funders. We wanted to learn more about the challenges they were facing in this changing research environment. And we found that the theme of assessing the real-world impact of their research just kept coming up time and time again. And so we decided to explore this further and see if there was any way that BMJ could help people with this issue. And on to the next slide. So research that improves patients' lives matters very deeply to the funders, the institutions, and the researchers who dedicate their resources to medical and health research. We engaged throughout the entire product development process with people who had on-the-ground experience of searching for evidence of this type of real-world impact. And we found that users were trying to answer questions such as, how was the research that I published used in health policy? And did the research that I funded actually change how care was delivered to patients? And also, how has the research been used as evidence in clinical guidance at a local, an international, and a national level? Our initial discovery was then followed up with much more in-depth interviews in which we could explore with those individual users all the issues and challenges they were facing. For example, we learned that one of the pain points that just also kept coming up was how time-consuming and really difficult it was to find any type of evidence of this type of impact. And then once found, to understand how it contributed to meaningful change in the real world. So we realized that BMJ Impact Analytics needed to provide a very quick and a very easy journey from the query to the data that was required by the user. And just onto the next slide. So understanding these types of pain points really drives our approach at BMJ to product development. And everything we learned in this research phase, we captured in a prototype, which we could take back to test and iterate with the users. So over to Dave now to explain more about UX at BMJ, and also to speak further about how we put the user at the center of creating BMJ Impact Analytics.
Thank you, Phil. I have to admit, sometimes when I talk about UX, it's with a degree of annoyance, repeatedly having to explain what it is and trying to convince people of its value. So it's comforting to be in the presence of like-minded folk who have no doubt also experienced those very frustrations. So echoing Alan's sentiment from the beginning. I'll start by just going through our approach at BMJ. So thinking about BMJ's mission of creating a healthier world, I have to believe a contributor to that is our continuous commitment to providing great experiences for users and customers to interact with our products and services. I think if you heard right in there, hearing me say, a healthier world is dependent on good UX. Meeting and ideally exceeding the needs of healthcare professionals and researchers is essential in maintaining, if not elevating, the trust we know the BMJ brand holds. And it's imperative that we provide knowledge in an accessible and trustworthy manner. So how do we engage users, get them to the quality content they're looking for, and encourage them to research? Fortunately, BMJ has this user-centered approach to product design and development. And we created our own version of this well-known product development process with customers and users at its core and the need for UX in every step. So it was 5 or 6 years ago that UX brought BMJ's product community together to collaborate and document the process by which we do product development, to acknowledge and centralize the collective understanding that was in people's heads. It's also a means to educate stakeholders, to help them trust what we're doing and why we're doing it. And this is the process we followed diligently in creating BMJ Impact Analytics. There's little more exciting for a UX than new product development. It's a search product. In a nutshell, it finds how research is used in health policy and clinical guidance. In our research, users told us that some database products required in-depth training to use, and even having to have dedicated employees to realize their full value. And even though we knew we were dealing with complex data, we didn't feel it meant we had to create a complex product. By listening to what our intended users said and observing how they interacted with our prototypes through multiple iterations, we were able to produce something intuitive that almost anyone could use with minimal education. Next slide, please. We'd iterated through various search results pages with the option to toggle between 2 different formats. Show me the research outputs that have been cited in health policy and clinical guidance, and show me the health policy and clinical guidance that cites my research, both of which allow highly specific filtering and afford easy click-through to the actual citation of the health policy or clinical guidance document, providing that context for real-world impact. To enable our users to save time, limit frustration, and extract full value of the products, getting users to such a rich set of data was the problem we had to solve. Based on the functionality of the types of products we'd come across in our research, our earliest prototype had 3 tab options on the search element, each defining the type of search to undertake and requiring selection prior to submitting search. Find me research outputs, find me health policy documents, and find me people. During the testing, the majority of participants either didn't select or notice the tabs and didn't get the results they were hoping for, often looking quite confused. And it was at this point we paid homage to the adage, users spend most of the time on other websites. So thank you, Google, but our dev team was less thankful. Removing the search tab option provides a clean search box, free of restrictions and ambiguity, while inviting users to type any search query they want. That in turn prompts an auto-suggest option, essentially moving the user's decision-making to a more natural position in their thinking. We tested this with our 3 main groups of users, with the feedback that they got the results they wanted quicker and with far less frustration. Next slide, please. So a year on from launch, we remain close to our customers and trialists, and as part of our feedback loop and continuous improvement approach, we acted on the feedback to expand the graphs we displayed for the summary. The number of search results can often run into the thousands, even with heavily targeted filtering. And as a list of results doesn't immediately tell a story to everyone, visualizing the data does a much better job in presenting top-level insights that are more easily consumed by stakeholders. They can be shared internally and presented to communicate real impact. The response to our data view has been overwhelmingly positive. And before I hand back to Michelle, I think it's important to add that UX can't really work in isolation. We're not people and teams that feed requirements and output design pages. Effective UX can really only happen with a cohesive product team, with a committed and supportive product manager. And I'm fortunate enough to have had that with impact analytics.
So we're really delighted to be finalists for this award, and we just wanted to thank everyone for letting us take you on this very brief journey into the development of BMJ Impact Analytics. Now over to Jane.
Thank you. And we do have some questions. So one of the attendees has said it sounds like the complaints and difficulties that users were having were probably known issues. So outside of those interviews, what other data sources did you use to inform your research?
There's a wealth of research on real world impact out there, and people that have been using other tools to collect data to provide analysis. We tapped into all of that, and but the most valuable sources of this information remained the user. So we had a lot of research that actually supported what we were doing, but returning back to the user and then finding that they were still having issues, and then why they were having issues, was still the most valuable source of information for us.
Okay, thank you. And someone asking about depth interviews, how many did you carry out and how many users did you test the prototype with?
So up to launch, probably north of 60 different interviews. Some of those were repeat. And we used a realm of methods, and that was both face-to-face, remote moderated, remote unmoderated, and some survey data as well. So a bit like a lot, but I would say probably in total for 100 different people. And it's continuing.
Wow.
So we're not keeping count at the moment of the ones that we're doing now.
Fantastic. And in terms of the feedback loop, where in the journey does it occur and how is it collated?
So we've actually integrated a feature onto the product itself that allows us to collect very brief survey information at the point of product features. And we also have a very well-developed feedback loop that we've set up with our early adopter customers and all our trialists as well. So we work incredibly closely with sales to meet with these people when we can, but also just to survey and collect their feedback to try and keep making continuous improvement to the product.
Thank you both for your presentation. I think those are all the questions for now from our audience. So I would now like to move on to Ruben, who is Head of User Experience at Cambridge University Press. Over to you, Ruben.
Thank you. Me just... Sorry, I'm having some technology troubles here with Zoom again, that I seem to have lost the toolbar again. It's somewhere. There we go. Can you see my screen now? Is it in presentation mode?
No, sorry, we can't see it. Ah, can see it now.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So, hi everyone, thank you for joining me in this presentation. I'm Ruben, Head of UX at Cambridge University Press. I'll jump straight into it, as it's only 10 minutes, but I want to talk about research directions, the project we presented, and the journey towards our UX excellence. We're still chasing it, so where we are and where we want to be. So research directions, I will start with the biggest challenge of this project, which is actually the concept itself. I already apologize for the judging panels that I might have sent a huge amount of evidence on the UX activities we sent. And I promise I did try to summarize as much as possible. But there it is. One of the challenges we had.
Ruben, sorry to interrupt. I think your screen is in presenters mode, so the screen is quite small for some of the audience. I'm just wondering if you can somehow make it full screen. Now we can see your desktop.
Okay. Can you see it now? Sorry, I thought I had.
It's still in. I think it's still in presenter mode. I don't know if there's an option on the bottom left of the screen.
I have right.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll let you.
It's all my many years of using Teams now. Sorry about that. So can you all hear me okay then?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
yes.
cool. So so regards to the research directions concept, the challenge here we had is that always starts with a question. So traditional journals, we will know that we have a theme around a particular journal, and authors would submit to that journal or a special call to action for a special series, etc. But research directions is about a question, and this question is generated either through the editorial board of the journal or particular journal, or in the future through the contribution of the community. So it's a series of journals, not just one journal. So this concept itself in itself was a bit of a challenge to get the users to understand. And in addition to that, research directions brought in some interaction challenges. So the contributions are not just the traditional journal paper, but also it's broken down into discrete parts, results analysis and impact papers. And in addition, it includes non-peer-reviewed early research contributions that sits in our Open Engage platform. So here, the complexity expands. So we're talking about also some technology complexities that through two platforms that's involved in the concept. And we need to get users to understand what sort of contributions they can submit, and where they are when they read a particular piece of content. They are reading peer-reviewed, non-peer-reviewed, etc. And another very, very interesting aspect of it is that the users can explore these contributions visually through this interactive network map. So they can see all the contributions that were put towards answering a particular question, but also users can submit contributions in response to previous contributions. So we imagine that in the future, this network map can get quite complex, enabling the users to explore it visually as well. So that introduces a great deal of complexity, and so such a novel concept. We focused on learnability. So all the traditional interaction models, the mental models that users already have, interactionally over other tools outside the academic publishing, we leverage in that those interaction patterns and traditional UX patterns, as well as with industry-specific conventions that we have in our academic publishing. The metadata that users are expected to use, to assess content, and of course combining all that repeatedly, iterating based on user feedback. And it was a very long process, and at the time we have several user testing sessions, user interview sessions, and our UX researcher was heavily involved in helping with the recruitment aspect of it. We collaborated. We have partnered with a fantastic consultancy, Lion Mason, who helps us with this UX efforts as well. And in some of these UX research activities, we invited previous users who already tested and gave us feedback on previous iterations of designs in order to assess whether our executions were actually meeting, we didn't understand correctly what the problem was. Is it solving the problem, as these users pointed out, as well as bringing in new users. So some stats, I won't stop too much on these stats. As I mentioned, this is a very, very brand new journal. So, the usage reflects that. But one thing I would like to point out is that users are contributing into all the different types of contributions and submissions here to these journals, including peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed contributions. And that suggesting that the users are understanding this concept, they are interacting and take advantage of what research directions allow them to do. So back then, our team was being created and incepted. It was growing. We have a few team members, and since then we focused on the three pillars: people, tools, and processes. And lots happens there. We have now a function, DevOps function, helping us with our design system creation, as well as we have UX designers, UI specialists, research function. And one thing I would like to bring as a highlight is our current UX agile outcome-driven vision, which is a cross-functional commitment we managed to achieve across, developers, UXers, Scrum Masters, QAs. And the idea that we rated several outcomes, important and feasible across all these functions. And the output we turned into these cards you're seeing here, which can be used in our practice and in workshops and any situation to keep those outcomes as a right target for the next 12 months. Also in processes, we have our UX optimization program. Anyone can identify an issue in our journeys, in our platforms, and these issues will be rated in these three dimensions. You see there: user severity, frequency, business priority. I'm happy to give more details on how this happened. But essentially it brings, attention to the business of UX impact, UX issues impact. And tools, of course, we've been, we have the user specs here, Google Analytics, Hotjar, Playbook. Many of you already know these tools, but the way we use it, we ensure that data is triangulated from multiple sources. And I would like to bring a little a highlight is our own GTP implementation. I'm sorry you must heard about GTP a lot by now, but the reason why I highlighted this here, because it is our own implementation, allow us to use it. The data is not used beyond our organization remit, so our team can use it to analyze semi-structured data, as well as do things like turn our personas more interactive, for example. Accessibility aspects of things, I would like to highlight that we are right now working towards having our own accessibility, assistive technology panel, and that will help us tremendously with our efforts of bringing users at any stage of the design. Of course, it needs to be our users, the users that are interested in the solutions we are providing, rather than any user that uses assistive technology, so we can understand the end-to-end journey of these users. And I'm conscious of time, so I want to rush straight into the highlights for the future here. We are really planning to expand and build upon existing initiatives. I couldn't possibly cover all what we were doing so far, but also implement this first iteration of our revised UX metrics that we are working on it now. I think, Alan, you mentioned UX metrics earlier on. Well, actually, it's going to be interesting to catch up at some point to talk about it. And continue to explore machine learning and AI opportunities. There's unsupervised machine learning methods that really helps on insights. And we are really happy to explore those things and continue to redesign the platform. Our design system now growing and embedding accessibility from the start. And of course, our goal is to have this assistive technology users panels set up in the next few months, at least with a few users already in it. And that's me for today. And thank you very much. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Ruben, for your presentation. We do have some questions. The first one, well, actually a statement. The ontology approach is great, says one of our attendees. How did you ensure that users would understand, and how is this maintained to flex to changes in the field?
That's a very interesting question, actually. The entire project had several, stages of user testing, and the network map itself had its own mini project attention and its own user testing. From trying to get the users to understand the types of contributions they had to the interaction themselves. The interaction itself was tested. So from early low fidelity prototypes and moving on in higher fidelity. So we tested it with real users and tried to get to understand, but we relied upon some classic interaction models for this type of map and the behavior of this type of maps. And with regards to, I think the biggest challenge you see here probably is when this map gets complex, what are you going to do? So we have already some ideas on how to address it, but we are actually waiting until we actually reach the number of contributions that start making this map more complex, and to implement some of these ideas. So, there is some clustering mechanism that we had in mind that we could apply. There is also some types of visual filtering that you can apply to restrict either by date or volume, etc. So we've started looking into that already from from the inception. But yes, that's a very good point.
Thank you. And another great question. So one of our audience would like to understand the volume of who you tested with and what you tested.
Right. So from memory, from all the different user groups, it was around 60 users, and consider that some of these users were repeated as well. So, and sorry, the second part of the question was where we tested, what we tested, is that?
Yeah, they want to know exactly what you tested.
Okay, so initially we had interviews without any visual aspect to try to understand, what the needs around several aspects of this project were. That we need to understand better the relationship of tools and collaborations, for example. So, and also a bit of discovery around that, around the concept itself, and how people interact, and how the research contributions, entire end-to-end journey works. And then afterwards, we had early iterations with low fidelity prototypes. And so we focus in different aspects. So, for example, naming and labels. We were not sure where people understood those types of, for example, those types of papers, analysis paper, impact paper, etc. We wasn't clear, and it turns out that there wasn't a common understanding around that terminology across the world. So some researchers would, consider an analysis paper something and impact paper something else. So we had to add some, key definitions through that as well. And we also tested the aspects of that these research directions are across two platforms. So we need to make sure the users understood not what was going on ended at the same time that was still part of the same, say, digital experience, the same product, let's say. So we tested a lot of that as well with the user. And there are other aspects that we tested. I mean, I can go on here, but I think that from memory, that was some of the challenges we had that kept, having to be iterated again and again and bring again and again in the user testing sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a final question, which other departments have access to the risk log?
So to the risk log?
Yes. Yeah, the question says, which other departments have access to the risk log? I don't know if the participant can expand on the question.
Yes, please. That would be very helpful.
Oh, there's a couple more questions actually. Can you say more about how you shared the work with the UX researcher that you mentioned? Which teams and roles were responsible for what?
Okay, so we at that time, as we're expanding our UX team, so this throughout time, several teams were involved. So initially, our UX researcher was heavily involved in the recruitment side of things. So to hone into that right type of user and recruit them from what we thought they were, the journals that these users would probably be attending. We put some recruitment surveys in there to identify those users, and heavily involved in that was our UX researcher. The consultancy Lion Mason helped us with the execution of most of the initial aspects of the user experience, prototypes and the iterations on that. Throughout the project, we had our in-house team as the team were hiring. That was all happening in parallel. So they would be involved in the UX, the other UX activities throughout. So for example, towards the network map design. So we have several iterations that our UX designer, senior UX designer, as well as UI designers would be involved and iterating in that process, as well as working with the product teams and the solution architects to get to the solution. Can we connect it this way? We wanted curved lines, and initially we only possible to do straight lines and so forth, and lots of collaboration with other departments like editorial department, who was essential for us to get things to a point that we could actually move on from a conceptual stage. So we had lots of early questions that we needed to align with the editorial team. And I wouldn't be able to remember how many other teams got involved throughout the entire project here to collaborate to get to the stage where we are now. The thing is, we're still evolving. So there are feedback collection mechanisms. We keep monitoring how users are behaving and using the tools. That every now and again there is a tweak, there is a filter improvement and things like that, which again would involve different teams and carry on evolving.
Thank you, Ruben. Laura, are you able to share our slide deck?
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. So we're actually almost at time. Actually, Laura, could you move to the next slide and we'll come back to this one. I just want to briefly mention. So first of all, I just want to thank all of today's speakers. I thought your presentations were really interesting. We will be announcing the winner of our 2024 UX Award at Access Lab. This is our online community event, and it's taking place on the 26th and 27th of February in different time zones. So the announcement will be made on the Monday, on Monday the 26th. So please do register for Access Lab to hear who the winner is. Yeah, we are at time. We did have a couple more questions if people want to hang on for a couple more minutes, if that's all right. So if we could go back to the questions slide. There was one question, I think, for Emma and Will around feedback mechanisms and what does that look like?
Sure, yeah, I'll take that. I'll switch my video on too. Yeah, so I suppose these were kind of all hands-on mechanisms engaging with users at different stages of the development. So as Emma talked about, we went through kind of an interview and survey stage at the start, but then through the build process, there was kind of an initial concept testing stage, a walking skeleton stage when we started introducing UX design to introduce some of the key user journeys, and then a kind of beta product testing stage, which went on for a number of months towards the end of the build. And the groups that were involved in those were sort of kind of split between board and editorial board feedback, trainee groups, and then they ranged from kind of structured work-throughs with users to look at those key journeys and side-by-side comparisons with the existing platform, because obviously that was still out in the world as a live product at the time. So focusing in on some of those user journeys that we saw as kind of key strategic levers, the subscription purchasing, etc., and looking at the kind of difference between those concepts and then those beta experiences and the live experience.
Thank you, Will. And Ruben, in your presentation, there was a question that we weren't sure about referring to a risk log. And I think the audience attendee has now said perhaps it was a prioritization impact list that you shared. Can you expand on it?
Prioritization impact list. Sorry, let me try to. Oh, right. Okay. I see what you mean. I can share my screen to give a bit of context to everyone who wants to have a look at what we're talking about. But it's this UX optimization program that we're talking about. So everyone has access to it, as in everyone, it's cross-functional. Not only the Agile team, not only the UX team, but actually other stakeholders. And the idea that anyone can see it and see all the issues, and actually we normally who adds the issues there would be the UX team, but anyone can access it, can view it, and we collate data around these issues and put in the same cards. So any insights we collect, any new feedback that comes that's related to it, updated every day, and we add to that card, and we review it on a quarterly basis to see if there is anything new and needs to be rated, etc. In fact, we have a meeting on that tomorrow, and once the issues reach a large size, then we have conversations with product teams. Can we move it into a roadmap? And there is a conversation around prioritization. I hope that answers your question.
I hope so too. Those are all of our questions now. And again, I'd like to thank all of our speakers and also everyone for attending. If you do have any further questions for our speakers, please do reach out to them directly. And just a reminder to register for our free online event, Access Lab, which is 26th and 27th of February, which is later this month, not far away now. Yes, thank you and enjoy the rest of your days. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.